Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining. Please note that we have live captioning and ASL translation available during our session today, and a recording will be posted later today as usual. Today we'll be going until 2 o'clock. This will be our final weekly briefing of December. We'll resume this series in January 15th after we all reconvene. Later today, Dr. Sandro Cinti, who was part of the briefing last week, we'll be sharing an update with the community on our vaccination plans. There was great news yesterday on the approval of the Pfizer vaccine by an FDA advisory committee, but of course, challenges remain around distribution, as it will be a major feat to get the vaccine into the arms of everyone who wants it in our state. Dr. Cinti's update will be at 3 p.m., and there's a link to the live stream of that update on our main gateway, the UMich Gateway page. Also, Michigan Medicine has created a vaccination information page with a list of frequently asked questions. I know there are many questions about the vaccine that have been submitted today. I'll share that link in the email I send to the community later this afternoon. To help plan for vaccine distribution, we'll be sending out a survey next week to students and employees on all 3 campuses that'll help us determine the number of people who'll be getting vaccines. The survey will be used to eventually schedule those who want the vaccine. It's very important for our planning efforts to complete the survey, even if you do not want the vaccine. The state is working on finalizing the initial priority groups based on risk of contracting the disease, and we'll share that information as soon as it's possible. I personally encourage everyone to get vaccinated when it's your turn to do so. It's the best way to hasten the end of the pandemic and a return to a normally functioning society. The university will do its very best to make this as easy as possible. In today's update, we'll hear from Chief Health Officer Preeti Malani, who'll give an update on campus conditions. Vice President Harmon will provide updates from student life. Provost Collins will provide updates from academic affairs. And today we'll also have a discussion on teaching, including lessons learned from the fall, ideas for engaging students, and classroom innovations and challenges. Participants will include James Hilton, who's our Vice President of Academic Innovation and University Librarian, Tim McKay, who's Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education in LS&A, Joanna Milanchuk, who's the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education in our College of Engineering, and finally, Matt Kaplan, who's the Executive Director of our Center for Research on Learning and Teaching. So first, let me turn it over to Dr. Malani.
Thanks, President Schlissel. So as you heard, this is our final town hall of 2020. That feels like a pretty remarkable moment. And it goes without saying that this has been a really hard year physically, emotionally, academically, socially, really for the entire community. And on campus, things are quiet, but it's finals week and students are making that last big push to wrap up what's been a very challenging semester. Finals week is always stressful, but there are new concerns this year with many students finishing up exams and projects from their permanent home. For parents and families, it's likely that your students need some space and some support. My own personal suggestion is to just ask how you can be helpful and do what you can to be supportive. Remind your students of all the that the academic resources are available virtually, and encourage them to reach out to their professors and academic advisors if they are stuck and feel overwhelmed. And I know today we're going to talk a little bit about teaching, and we'll hear more about this. We have frequently talked about stress and well-being this semester, and I remind everyone each week, COVID's not the only risk to our health, and for students, CAPS remains available for you, and for others, the Faculty and Staff Counseling Office, as well as the Office of Counseling and Workplace Resilience at Michigan Medicine. I was really happy to hear Vice President Harmon and Provost Collins have launched a new mental health work group to consider best practices and innovative ideas moving forward. And of course, this topic is not new. It's gotten lots of attention in recent years, but there are new challenges and also opportunities in our largely remote format and as we move into the next semester. And really the entire year has been about reframing what we can do and finding ways to adapt and stay connected. And, again, campus, if you walk through, it's pretty quiet and case counts have come down. There are still a few cases that have popped up in the last few days. And fortunately, case counts have improved slightly in Michigan. They're still pretty high, but they have flattened a bit. but COVID has not gone away. For the past several days, we've been averaging really astounding numbers, more than 200,000 new cases of COVID in the US for the last several days, with more than 3,000 deaths for multiple days in a row. And I think as we enter the holidays, each of us is going to have to make decisions about how to celebrate safely. And I really believe there are ways to decrease risk, but still find ways to connect either virtually or in person in small groups. Once again, I want to emphasize that absolute need to stay vigilant. As you heard from the president, there's light at the end of the tunnel. The vaccines are coming. It won't help immediately, but change will happen slowly. I also am waiting for my turn to be vaccinated, and again, encourage everyone to also do the same once it's your turn. So, let's all do our part. Let's continue to be safe and also to be kind.
Thank you, Preeti. Next, Vice President Harmon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to provide a brief housing update and compliance guidelines for winter 21. I'm going to cover resources and support available to our students leading up to and during exams, as well as the ways that we're still here for you during winter break. And then I will also take some time to acknowledge our winter graduates. So first, with respect to housing, for those who are coming back to the residence halls next semester, keep in mind that we have important expectations outlined already for you next semester. So it's important that you familiarize yourself with these over break so you're fully prepared during winter 2021. The university is introducing 3 public health informed requirements to protect our community. First, flu vaccination. As a condition of living and housing for winter 21, you're required to receive the 2021 flu vaccine. The requirement will provide additional protection to the housing residential community. More information is available on the CDC webpage about the importance of flu vaccines. I had my vaccine in October, so I wanted to get on that early. Second, we are going to require that you take a COVID test prior to arrival on campus in January. Quest Diagnostics will mail a pre-arrival test kit to your permanent residence in early January. Please make sure that you complete the COVID-19 test, as it will be required for move-in in January. We really have to make sure that we have full compliance on that step. Third, there'll be mandatory weekly COVID testing. Testing will take place in a variety of convenient locations across campus and some in residential facilities. So more information will be sent on that step. If you're a student who has determined that you have a need for housing this winter based on our established need criteria on the housing website, you can still apply for a space. You can make that request. To do so, complete the winter 2021 housing consideration form, which you can find on housing.umich.edu, and you can detail your circumstances and it will be reviewed. Whether or not you're in university housing next semester or not, there are steps that you must take to keep yourself and your friends safe. Undergraduate students have been advised to stay home for winter semester. Informing this guidance is our experience that unsafe social gatherings increase health risk and place a strain on our public health resources in the local community and on campus. The University of Michigan Public Safety and Student Life Leadership continue to discuss additional measures for inspiring improved compliance with COVID-19 guidelines for safety, with a strategic focus on social gatherings on and off campus. Please go to the Campus Blueprint website at campusblueprint.umich.edu for the latest on how to stay safe and compliant in the future. Now I want to speak about resources and support during exams. You're in the middle of exams and the end is in sight, but here are some programs and support that is available to you during this time period. I really encourage you to take advantage of the Group X free week through Recreation Sports, which started this past Wednesday and goes through next Tuesday. You can take a break from exams and final projects and take advantage of a bunch of free offerings by Rec Sports. Everything from Zumba to Tabata, I need to try that myself, to yoga, kickboxing on Zoom. You can find the full schedule at recsports.umich.edu. If you like any of the free classes, you can purchase an unlimited Group X class pass for next semester and keep up the fun exercise throughout the term from wherever you are in the world through January through April. You can be creative about how you get your blood flowing so you can feel better and think more clearly, even if you don't join a Zoom exercise class. For example, yesterday we had a safe and fun sip and stroll event for anyone still on campus or in the area, where participants were given free hot chocolate and to sip on and conversation cards while they strolled through the ARB safely, and so using social distancing. So a shout out to Michigan Dining and Rec Sports for facilitating this fun break. Even after exams are over, Student Life will continue to be here for students over winter break through December 22nd, and we'll take a break, but we will return on Monday, January 4th, 2021. If you're a parent or family member of a current student listening today, I highly recommend you check out the resources at studentlife.umich.edu/parents, where you can also subscribe to our regular Family Matters electronic newsletter, and you can keep up to date. Finally, I want to congratulate our winter graduates. I'm so proud of you, all of you who are graduating this term. I even had the honor to make a videotape of congratulatory remarks for our Blaven Scholars Program graduates. I am filled with pride watching new graduates virtually turn the tassel and join the huge family of over 500,000 University of Michigan alumni. In the midst of a pandemic, that is something to celebrate. Congratulations, good job, and good luck. And I'll close by saying we're coming into the final stretch of the semester, and this will be our last briefing until next year. So I want to wish everyone safe and enjoyable holidays, and go Blue.
Thanks very much, Martino. Provost Collins?
Great. Thank you very much, President Schlissel, and good afternoon, everybody. As you know, this is our final briefing for the fall semester. And so I'd really like to start by thanking each of you, our faculty, our staff, and our students for your hard work, resilience, your dedication, and creativity throughout this semester. This term, as we all know, has brought so many new challenges to all of us. It's required us to remain flexible and adaptable because the circumstances, of course, have continued to evolve. And I'm really grateful to be part of a community where together we have joined and risen to meet those challenges. And that's something that I hope you join me in being proud of as well. So I'd like to take this time to wish all of our students the best of luck with your final exams and your final projects, and then a well-deserved break. And I'd also like to take a moment to congratulate our graduates for a huge achievement, which is really important to celebrate and to mark and recognize. To our faculty and staff, I hope each of you will find some true moments to disengage and to really recharge during the upcoming break. So I'd like to do in the remaining time that I have to highlight 3 items. The first one is on grading. On the Ann Arbor campus, the deadline for grade submission has been extended by 24 hours for the fall 2020 term. So that gives instructors 4 days instead of 3, in other words, 96 hours to submit their grades following their final exam. We hope that providing this added flexibility will be helpful for our instructors while still meeting the needs of our students and also of the staff who work behind the scenes once those grades are submitted. Second, we have a new staff survey. The university is inviting staff on the Ann Arbor campus to share feedback about working through the COVID-19 pandemic using a new online survey. This input will help to support and to help to inform possible new resources, policies, and actions that will support our employees in 2021. Since March, we've taken a number of steps to support our faculty and staff on all of our campuses. These include policies to support remote work, new paid time off programs, the additional season days, resources for child independent care, and mental and emotional well-being programs as well. The survey, which was emailed to all regular staff on the Ann Arbor campus on Wednesday, asks about remote work, areas of well-being, child independent care, and also feelings towards the new vaccine. The survey will be open until Friday, December 18th at 5 p.m., and I strongly encourage all of the staff on the Ann Arbor campus to participate and help inform our decisions and choices going forward. Last but not least, childcare resources. With so many parents and children working and learning from home, childcare just continues to be a huge challenge during the pandemic. As we announced in the record yesterday morning, the university plans to introduce 2 new resources in early 2021 to help our faculty and our staff. The first is a university paid membership to care.com for University of Michigan faculty and staff. The membership grants unlimited access to a network of caregivers to find ongoing care for children, adults, seniors, pets, and more. Employees would still be responsible for the actual cost of the care that they utilize. The other new announcement is about a new family-to-family posting board for various family care needs from University Human Resources. Faculty and staff through this new platform will be able to create and respond to posts about sharing resources and providing in-kind support, such as childcare, tutoring, elder care with other employees at the university. These programs are in addition to the existing resources, such as Family Helpers, the Kids Care at Home program, and the Campus Homes Network. In a moment, I'll turn things over to our featured guests. But as I noted at the start of my remarks, the fall semester really has been incredibly challenging. And as it draws to a close, I'd like to reiterate my thanks to all of you for working together to ensure that we have advanced the university's mission. I know the effort required to do this was substantially greater than in normal times, and that the circumstances in which you all had to do this work made the task even harder. We know that the next semester will also be challenging, and we hope it will also be better in some very important ways. And so with that in mind, our panelists have been asked to reflect on what we've learned and how we're working to improve the classroom experience in all of its forms for the winter semester. So I'll hand things now over to my colleague, Vice Provost James Hilton. James, floor is yours.
Thank you, Provost Collins. In the interest of time, I want us to jump right in. I think one of the things that we did recently was to survey students and faculty about the fall experience. And on the one hand, those surveys suggested that for many faculty and students, the experience in the fall, particularly the remote teaching experiences, were better than they expected. Of course, part of that reaction is probably because people had very low expectations for remote teaching, and the reality turned out to be better than their fears. But the survey results also showed that there were a lot of challenges. Things that are just baked into face-to-face experiences are just harder to put into a remote experience, and they require much more intentionality. So to highlight just a few of the concerns that we saw, that we know folks are struggling with, managing expectations around workload, that's true for both faculty and students, effectively assessing the learning that's taking place in both remote and hybrid formats, creating a personal connection between faculty and students, and creating connections between students who are in the same class. Again, things that face-to-face just kind of naturally happen. Motivating and engaging with material when really too often it's easier to be passive and just sit back and watch. And a really important one, balancing the mix of synchronous and asynchronous participation. Both have strengths and both have weaknesses in the online format, and having access both to technical and content resources. So we know those are challenges, and I'm gonna turn to our panelists to do it. And I'm gonna start with you, Professor Milanchuk. You've been deeply involved in the College of Engineering's approach to the fall semester. So how's it going and what have we learned?
Yeah, thank you, James. So one of the most important things that we learned is that moving from in-person to remote or hybrid is really much different than we initially thought. And we can't just pick things up that you normally do in the classroom and drop them into Zoom and expect things to be fine. As you mentioned, one thing in particular that I think has been the theme for this entire semester is about workload. You know, it's gone up for both students and faculty. One of the things that we were really hammering home over the summer is we asked the faculty to create very high quality resources, be they videos, modules, learning activities, and so forth. And they did just that. The trouble, though, is that the faculty in a lot of cases just put all those resources up there without necessarily explaining their expectations. You know, so students had all of these different videos and in-person kind of office hour sessions and all these other things, and students really didn't know where they should be spending their time. So just to give a very simplistic kind of example, in the before times, if a student didn't go to lecture that day, there was really no expectation that they would make up the lecture. Now that lecture video is always there, hanging over the heads of the students. So, you know, students really don't really understand how to be in this new environment. You know, we've spent the last several decades training our students on how to be in class. And our students have always been incredibly successful in that environment. I like to think of it like this. Our students have been practicing driving a car for a long time, and now we're asking them to fly an airplane. Sure, both of these things are vehicles, and some of the principles are the same. You know, they steer, they brake, they accelerate, and so forth, but really the controls are completely different, and the stakes seem so much higher. And so we really do need to be careful and keep in mind these different aspects as we interact with our students. So speaking of high stakes, we've really had to look into online exams. In the winter of 20, one of the things that we were really concerned about is internet access, making sure that everyone had access to the exams. We were worried about time zone issues if people were in different kinds of places. And we wanted to make sure that students had the ability to complete their exams. But in creating some of these policies, we also inadvertently made it quite easy for students to cheat. Over the summer, the College of Engineering brought together a group of faculty to really think about how to do online exams in a way that would reduce the pressure on students and also reduce the opportunity for cheating. We came up with a lot of different strategies that we've implemented across the college, and our faculty implemented them. And so far this semester, I've heard a lot less anxiety around this area. You know, some of the things that we're doing are both with regard to how we go about assessing, asking faculty to do different kinds of assessments, in addition to, you know, instead of high stakes testing, but also using other technological strategies for just administering the exams. But really, you know, it comes down to this. We really need to go back to the principles of good, inclusive teaching. We need to be very careful in curating the resources we present to our students and be exquisitely explicit with what we expect. Really let students know what we want them to do, while keeping in mind that we also have to have a certain number of credit hours and time associated with those credit hours that we have to kind of stay within. And we also need to be empathetic with the students and also with ourselves, and give each other some grace as we all learn how to navigate this completely new context.
That's great. Professor McKay, do you have some thoughts? Are you muted?
Thanks very much, James, for giving me a chance to talk about this. I'm going to focus my comments today on the importance of engagement and making connections. During the fall semester, our students, our faculty, pretty much everyone in our community reported widespread difficulty in making human connections. For our students, these were important connections both with other students and between students and faculty. And what we saw play out in the fall is that students felt the impact of this on themselves in many ways, including on their motivation and on their organization. Often they help each other remain organized in classes, but also in their sense that they're valued as an individual by the university community. That sense is centrally important to us, centrally important to our students' success. Part of the reason for this is that we're all experienced with interacting in physical classrooms. Our students have been doing it for many years. Some of us, like me, have been doing it for many, many years. But we're all finding ourselves needing to find new ways of interacting in an online setting, and of doing that in ways that foster the kinds of relationships that are so valuable to us when we're working in person. So I want to talk about some of the ways in which faculty members are working to help students engage both with them, but also with one another. One of the most important things that we've discovered is that we need to make sure that we're setting aside time to build and sustain relationships. A lot of our faculty members are beginning the term spending more time than they would normally do in activities that allow them to get to know their students, to understand the various circumstances that their students are in, which today can include which time zones they're in, as well as what reasons they're taking the class, what their background is, and so on. We're also looking for ways, and faculty are, to provide more opportunities for students to meet one another, both at the beginning of a course when you're setting the tone for the community in a class, and also to follow up regularly during the course, recognizing that we don't have the informal opportunities to ask people how they are and what's going on, so needing to build those into courses. Our faculty members have done some really creative things in changing their approaches to office hours, and I think Joanna mentioned this a little bit. Opening them up for drop-in and group discussion. The fact that office hours are now accessible to all students from anywhere makes them actually more accessible than they were in the past. Students who wouldn't have been able to travel to office hours are now able to just jump in for a part of a Zoom session. So that's gone pretty well. And we've learned that we have to be very thoughtful about the timing of these, especially for courses that have students who are spread across the United States, perhaps on the West Coast, or even overseas. We have instructors who are teaching students in every time zone on the planet right now, and they're finding it's important to be very thoughtful about how they schedule things like that. Our faculty have learned that the feedback they've always provided to students in the form of feedback on assignments and activities is especially valuable now. And they're doing everything they can to make that feedback increasingly personal. It's a chance to have a one-on-one interaction with each and every student who's in the class. A really interesting development that's occurred in online courses is the use of a back channel conversation among the students while a synchronous lecture or class is going on. Students are able to use the chat function in these tools to ask and answer questions among themselves during a synchronous class, and to use discussion forums in the same way in asynchronous classes. This has been especially effective when students have regular homework assignments that they're doing. They can work on them together and engage in a kind of continuous conversation. Finally, a lot of our instructors have recognized that the structures that exist to keep people on track are different in remote learning. Often the fact that you come to class at a particular time and meet with all your fellow students informally as you get ready for class and so on provides support for remembering everything that's going on and keeping track of what's happening. So a lot of our instructors are doing things like adding a weekly course email with reminders both about what's just passed in the class and what is soon to come. As I said, in normal times, this usually happens informally around class, but when we're far apart, it's proven essential to be more explicit than usual. Now, one of the key factors in connecting students and their instructors is this choice of whether to make each part of the class synchronous or asynchronous. Now, those are words that a year ago, most of us did not use very often. So for those in this session who may not have been deeply involved in online learning this term, let me say that a synchronous class is one that meets all together in real time, whether that's in person or online. So everybody comes together during the same hour in a session that happens only during that hour. An asynchronous class is one that's delivered so that everyone can engage with it whenever it's convenient for them. So a recorded lecture is a modern version of an asynchronous piece of a class. But of course, there are many examples from pre-COVID times, including things like textbooks, which you can use whenever you want, or other readings. Now, there are no clear rules for whether to do something synchronously or asynchronously. And decisions about this are contextual. They depend on the details of the class and what you're trying to accomplish as an instructor. Our instructors are making these decisions by weighing the benefits of real-time interaction, which are many, with the varied realities of students' lives during the pandemic, including the fact that they're spread across the country and the world. In addition, we know that many students and even faculty have struggled, at least occasionally, with internet access. So recognizing that it's more possible right now that a student might actually not be able to get to the class weighs in your decision about whether to make that class synchronous or asynchronous. What are some of the trade-offs? Synchronous meetings are great in some ways because they support nimble interaction, just like live classrooms do, both between the students and the faculty, but also among the students in things like breakout sessions and the chat stream. And synchronous classes like that are especially effective in that way when they're smaller, when there aren't that many students in these. The other good thing about synchronous classes, something that I didn't particularly anticipate, is that their regularly scheduled nature provides a lot of helpful structure to many students. Just knowing that there are several lectures to watch this week doesn't tell you when you should do it, and having a regularly scheduled class helps with that. The problem with synchronous meetings is that they're not as accessible. They require that everyone should have consistent internet access and that students who might be in very different time zones still attend. So that's a drawback of synchronous meetings. The other thing that they lose is the opportunity to experience something more than once. A lot of our students have found the ability to go back to a lecture and review it very valuable to them. So that's another kind of downside. So as instructors are thinking about using synchronous meetings, we ask that they do things like record those synchronous meetings so that they're available afterwards, and provide alternative ways for students to earn participation credit. So if, for example, for one day they can't get to class, it's okay that that's the case. And we have to stress that large courses face these challenges in exceptional ways, and so do those which enroll many first-year students, because our first-year students are somewhat more likely to be far from campus this winter. So that's the things about synchronous meetings. What about asynchronous meetings? Well, the great thing that they do is that they allow students freedom to interact with the material at their choice of time and at their choice of pace. Students can stop and start and go back through lectures. So there are a lot of good things about asynchronous materials. But of course, they limit the interaction among faculty and students. And they provide less help with keeping students on track. Just having a lot of lectures that you know you're supposed to do is different from knowing exactly when you're supposed to arrive and being expected to be there. So when instructors are using asynchronous meetings, we ask that they always offer effective and clearly advertised opportunities that let students interact both with the instructors and with their peers. In a lot of courses, this happens by having asynchronous lectures and synchronous discussion sections. We also ask that our instructors provide students with additional support to ensure that they're keeping up, things like this weekly to-do email. So as we think about synchronous and asynchronous delivery, there are a lot of choices to be made. And as I reflect on this, I think back to our pre-COVID in-person residential education. We used to think of that as entirely and necessarily synchronous. But of course, it was never really fully synchronous. We've always asked students to learn both inside class and outside of class, all together and on their own time. As we've shifted to remote learning, we've just had to adapt and to learn new ways of coming together. So with those comments about engagement and synchronous and asynchronous classes, I'm going to turn things over to Matt Kaplan, who will say a few words about the continually expanding resources being made available by instructional support teams on our campus.
Thank you so much, Tim, and Joanna as well for those remarks and summarizing what we've learned about the teaching and learning environment in the last term and a half, really. And I want to start by saying that I've been really impressed, as I'm sure you have, by the time and effort instructors at all levels have been devoting to creating positive remote and hybrid learning experiences for students. And also recognize that this is continuing as instructors take what they've learned really since we moved remote in March and thinking about how to improve courses for the winter. And that's going on. In fact, Tim and I will be heading right after this session to one of two programs for instructors in LS&A to hear from a panel of colleagues about what they've learned around issues like synchronous and asynchronous teaching, and over 200 faculty are enrolled for those sessions. I really want to emphasize that there's a robust network of support for instructors as they plan for winter, whether they're new to teaching in the remote environment or they're thinking about how to apply what they've learned from the fall. There are several provost office units, including CRLT, Academic Innovation, ITS, and the library, as well as technology offices in each of the schools and colleges ready to assist with winter term planning. One really important thing for instructors to note is that they can contact any of our offices with their questions. We meet regularly, and we will know where to direct them to make sure they get the help they need. We will also be offering a follow-up to our very successful Ready to Go Blue program, which we first ran in August. Between now and the start of classes, over 50 synchronous and asynchronous workshops are being offered, and they range from technology-specific topics like using Zoom or creating video, to topics around teaching strategies, such as approaches to engaging students or effective use of group work in remote teaching. A full list of sessions can be found by visiting teachtech.umich.edu. That's teachtech.umich.edu. We're also offering a new program called Just-in-Time Consulting. On 4 dates in January, instructors will be able to drop in electronically to discuss their specific courses. We'll have consultants from a range of support units who can field questions and hold tailored discussions with instructors. Information about just-in-time consulting can also be found at teachtech.umich.edu. For instructors who want quick tips and videos to inform their planning, a curated set of resources and links are being developed for that page. And the technology offices in schools and colleges also offer robust resources for teaching remotely. One thing I want to say to build on some of the comments here is on that Teach Tech page, there's a link to a workload calculator that might be useful to thinking about how much you're asking students to do. And there's also a link to some resources around testing and assessment of students. I also want to mention a project designed to capture student voices called What Work. Students can find a link on the Canvas homepage to a site where they can record a brief 30-second video describing an example of how an instructor supported their learning or how that instructor created community in their class. We'll collect these videos and share them with instructors, and so I encourage any students who might be watching to check out the site and share their stories. Finally, I want to send a message to students and encourage you to ask for help if you're encountering issues that are making it difficult for you to participate in your courses. Please reach out for assistance. There are lots of resources at the university to help you work through these issues. You don't need to try to tackle it alone. Undergraduates can contact the Dean of Students, graduate students can talk to their advisors or directors of graduate studies in their areas.
Great, thanks a lot. So I think we got a little bit of time here to do at least a couple more questions each, and then somebody can get the hook if we go too long. Matt, I actually want to stick with you for a minute. And one of the things that I loved, Joanna's the before times. One of the things that was a clear focus in the before times was how we do inclusive teaching, and inclusive teaching in the current times has to be even more challenging. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available and what you're observing in CRLT around that.
Sure, thanks, James. I'm glad to talk about this. Inclusive teaching has been a real focus at CRLT and the university more broadly. And I want to say that many of the points that Joanna and Tim articulated echo core principles for inclusive teaching, as you said, whether in the remote or face-to-face context. And while these are important for all students, we know from research that they have a particularly positive impact on the education of students from historically underrepresented groups whose experiences have been shaped by systemic inequities in our society. And so instructors can find a link to a full list of inclusive teaching principles on the teachtech.umich.edu site, but I want to emphasize really two here that are important in this environment, but always in teaching. The first is the need to be clear and communicate fully about expectations, and both Tim and Joanna have talked about this. What gets called in the research transparency. And while this is particularly important in the remote moment, as has been said, because some of the markers of expectations are not as clear in remote teaching, we know that being open and explicit about the rationale for assignments, reasons for course norms, or making those norms and expectations explicit, discussing course structures, that these things will benefit all students. And they're particularly important for students who come from backgrounds with less exposure to higher education, for example, first-generation college students. A second principle that's particularly important right now is flexibility. As we know and as we've heard, students are facing a range of challenges in their schooling, in their personal lives, and it's important for instructors to think carefully about responding to student need with compassion, as well as building flexibility into course structures. And this supportive approach to teaching is really always relevant in responding to students' needs as they arise, such as the onset of a new mental health challenge, a campus hate incident that causes students in the targeted group to feel unsafe, or any number of family, health, financial, or climate challenges that can affect any student, but are likely to hit already marginalized students harder. So these are some inclusive teaching principles that are relevant now, but as I said, are relevant in any context for teaching and learning. And there are lots of resources out there to help faculty. The link that I referred to has material with reflection questions that give specific strategies and ask instructors to think about ways that they might be able to incorporate those inclusive teaching strategies into their own teaching.
Great, thanks a lot. And Joanna and Tim, I'll ask each of you to take either one of two questions. Either what is it that you're really excited about as we think what I'm now going to refer to as the after times? What is it that you're excited about as we start to move towards those? Or what is it that keeps you awake at night? So you can go optimist or pessimist, your choice. Joanna, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So what am I'm going to go optimistic for now. And some of the things that I'm really excited about, and I think it's going to be an incredible challenge, so maybe it's kind of a mixed bag, is that, you know, what we're going through right now with regard to teaching is really making us rethink what we do. And one of the things that I've really heard from faculty that makes me so happy is that faculty are saying to me, you know, this is the first time in a long time that I've really looked at what I'm teaching and why, and had the opportunity to really change the way I do things. There have been a lot of faculty who were very resistant to using video, for instance, in their classes, thinking that, you know, there's only one way to do it, and this is the way that I've always done it, and this is the best way, and we're just going to keep going with this old way. And now we've overcome that activation barrier, and I think we've become less risk averse, right, to trying some of these new technologies. You know, what someone said, I think Tim said it about, you know, the back channel for synchronous classes. Yes, absolutely. You know, being able to have virtual office hours. I know that in some cases, some professors do an incredible job with this. Other students are still figuring out how to do this. Other classes are still trying to figure out how to do this. So as we learn how to use these technologies, I think that we can really start using them a lot more. The things that I'm really looking forward to, you know, in the next couple of years is getting the students back on campus. You know, I miss that energy, and I can't wait to see everybody again. You know, like walking through campus during career fair. There's just such incredible energy. But at the same time, because we had to do virtual career fair, you know, some of the lines were taken care of in a way because we were doing it virtually. So I'm looking forward to, you know, having that in-person energy, but also like smoothing out some of the bad things, like having to wait in line for a recruiter, you know, being able to stay in your dorm room to do office hours, you know, having lectures online so that you can refer to them again. Oh my God, transcripts, like being able to go back and look at the transcript for a lecture, so useful. So I think that when we come out of this, we're going to become much better instructors than we are now. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Great, thanks. Tim, hopeful or
Great.
sleepless?
So just, I'm an optimist as well, as Joanna and James know well, but I'm going to talk first a little bit about something that's keeping me awake. You know, our university exists to serve the people of the state of Michigan and the nation and the world. And those people, our society is in trouble in a lot of ways, economically, in public health circumstances. And we're seeing that play out with several years of students. You know, so the students who were planning to come to us this year, the students who are planning to come to us next year, And it's very important that we as a university respond to that and do everything we can to provide access and support to the college-going community in this period of time, and also to the communities that are around us. So I'm worried about that. I'm also excited to see us try to step up for it, but I think it's something that keeps me awake at night, is worrying about a set of students who might miss out on their higher education opportunities. We can't let that happen. On the optimistic side, I have worked for many years, as a lot of you know, on the giant classes that Michigan teaches. And if any of you have ever been at Michigan, you know we have to teach statistics to 2,000 students a semester. Those classes have always been somewhat problematic for everyone involved, for faculty who teach them, for students who take them. Sometimes they're referred to as weed out classes in a way that no one intends, but they're sometimes perceived that way. We have an opportunity, and we're actually engaging in this right now, to change those classes in ways that will transform them from that kind of sensibility to one where students will come and know that the purpose of this class and its reality is for them to set down deep roots in this subject. So to really get introduced to it and have a confident beginning to their engagement with that subject. Lots of us here on the screen are working on that problem right now. And the fact that every single thing we normally do has been thrown up in the air gives us a chance to change them much more rapidly than we've ever imagined we would have. And I'm very excited about coming out of this with new models for those courses that are much more effective, much more inclusive, and much more successful. So personally, this is an opportunity, and I think we're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, so Tim, if I can just piggyback on something that you just said, I am in 100% agreement with you on that. And, you know, like assessments are one way of thinking about it. I mean, like doing you know, an exam in a classroom, that is a very effective way of doing an assessment if you have like an in-person kind of scenario. It's more difficult in the virtual case. And so, you know, this is an opportunity for us to like rethink what do we mean by assessment, and can we do assessment differently? And I know that that's something that you're really worried about, as am I also. And also grading. You know, yep. We look at this whole PASS, no record COVID, and this semester we have PASS, PS, and no record COVID. I mean, so what do the grades actually mean? And what do we mean by passing? I mean, I think this is really an opportunity for us as faculty to sit down and think about what do the grades mean in a deeper way. We've been doing things for so long in the same way that I think we just sort of, we don't even give it much thought, but now we kind of have to think about it in a completely different way. And I love that.
Thanks. You know, I'm shocked both of you went down the optimist route. President Schlissel, back to you.
Does that mean I get to be the pessimist? Thanks. So, well, yeah, thanks for that conversation. I think it's really important. And I'm going to hold us all to account to remember the innovations we tried, the successes and failures, you know, during this period, so we can capture the best of it. And, you know, I personally think that all faculty that were forced to experiment with different ways to teach have overcome an activation energy barrier that's really prevented a lot of innovation in teaching. So, you know, I share the optimism that teaching in Michigan will be forever changed and really give us a shot on the arm for things that Tim and Joanna, James, and others have been working on for a long time. I'd like to transition now for the rest of our time to ask Preeti to moderate some questions that have come in from the audience and came in before as well. Preeti?
Yeah, thanks. And I really enjoyed that conversation around classrooms. And I will say that the same kind of questions are being asked on the other side, research groups and others. And we had a discussion this morning just about best practices. So many of us are looking to you to also help inform our research teams, because like my group, for example, we're meeting virtually and have been all year just to keep those conversations going. So the first question is, if my grandmother is recovered from COVID with some symptoms, can I hug her at Christmas? I don't know what to tell people in my family that have had COVID and have recovered, and are they safe to be around? And I guess that question is going to be for me. And you know, some of you know I'm an infectious disease physician. What you might not know is I'm also a geriatrician. And so the question is one that is an interesting one to me. And the answer I might give depends on a lot of things. But I actually do think that it's important to find ways to safely connect. And I think, frankly, it's important to hug your grandmother because, you know, life is short. but to try to do things safely. So many of you are aware the CDC has actually recommended not gathering. And, certainly the safest thing is to not see anyone in person, although I think that also carries a cost and risk. So what I would suggest is to really limit your gatherings to those really within your household and maybe a few others, to really be aware and have those somewhat awkward conversations with family and friends about, what kind of mitigation strategies people are following. If you are meeting with others, spread out, wear a mask. And again, I'm not sure with this question, if it's like grandmother's recovered and had symptoms or is having symptoms now. If certainly anyone has any symptoms right now, or they're like recently diagnosed with COVID, they should stay in place and should not be seen in person, but we should find ways to support them virtually. And again, these are these nuanced things that are really difficult, but I would say if you can see your grandmother and have a mask on and everyone is healthy, just a quick hug is going to be fine. That's my geriatric view on it, because I think this idea of abstinence only, it didn't work. It didn't work for other things, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work for public health either. So again, find ways to be safe. So next question is, how will the all virtual classes in winter of 2021 affect international students who are planning to enroll in winter of 2021? And I'll give this question to Provost Collins.
Great, thank you. So the answer to that one is that the guidance around enrollment for international students is going to remain the same for the coming semester as it was this fall. So what that means is that students who have been and will continue studying from within the United States are allowed to enroll fully online if they choose to do so. And this includes those students who began their studies on campus in the fall. But students for whom the first semester in the US will be winter 2021, so this coming semester, they will need to enroll in at least one in-person or hybrid class. And the International Center strongly recommends that this be a 3-credit course. There's additional information on the International Center website, which we encourage students who fall into one of these categories to focus on, and the International Center is also available to answer questions as well. So the guidance remains the same as what it has been this fall so far.
Thanks. What are plans for continuing banks of paid time off for dependent care or illness after December 31st? And I'm going to give this question to President Schlissel.
Well, the university's own COVID paid time off program does not currently have an expiration date. So that's going to remain active as long as the pandemic remains a threat into the new year. The 2 federal programs that you all know about are scheduled to expire at the end of the calendar year if there's no extension passed by the federal government. So we're monitoring this closely. We'll put information out as change. I think it's quite possible, even if the lame duck session of Congress doesn't pass a new set of CARES Act type funding and other regulations, the new administration in January will. So we'll keep everybody up to date. Our own paid time off for COVID continues. And one thing I want to stress, one of the very most important things you can do is if you're having symptoms, stay home. Please don't come to work if you have a sore throat, a fever, the kind of COVID-like symptoms that we've spoken about all semester, so that you just don't spread things to people who are waiting to be vaccinated and to become safe.
It's good advice for all of us. Don't come to work and don't go other places either. Next question, this one's for Martino. Have any COVID cases been tied to the use of on-campus gym recreation facilities?
Thank you, Dr. Milani. According to our public health professionals, we have not seen any cases that have been tied to recreational sports facilities. And that's for a number of reasons. One, as we all probably know, the recreation facilities were not open the entire semester based on the state governor's order. But when they did open, there was quite a bit of planning to ensure safety. For example, equipment was spaced out so to promote social distancing. Even markings on the ground where people stretch or work out were set up so there would be social distancing. You can't enter a recreation facility without a reservation. When you do enter a recreation facility, it's touchless in terms of the check-in procedures. We had modified hours to allow for additional cleaning. So there were a number of different safety measures put in place, even back in the summer planning for an opening to ensure safety. So fortunately, we have not seen or heard of any infections based on use of the recreations facilities.
Thanks. And I have to say, Dr. Ernst and I were fortunate to tour all those facilities and really look at the mitigation strategies. And, it's one of those things that it sort of blows your mind, but it can be done safely. And again, the numbers are very, very small. There are limitations, but again, it doesn't look like it usually does. And those have been extremely safe. So last question that I'm going to ask, this one is for Provost Collins. Dr. Collins said the campus survey was sent out Wednesday, but I have searched my email with multiple approaches and strategies, and I have not received a copy. Is there a place I can reach out for assistance?
So as we said, we certainly want all of the staff to be able to participate. And so when we're posting the live stream for today's event, we'll also post the address so that people have another way to access the survey information. Thanks for asking that question.
Okay, and it looks like there's one quick final one. What suggestions do you have for students whose professors are not following the best practices that Tim McKay and Joanna Milchek mentioned?
So let me just say that one thing that's been clear this year is that both students and faculty are figuring out how to do this together. And very, very often our faculty members learn from their students how they might do something in a way that works better. So the very first step is to speak with your faculty members about ideas that you have for things that might make things work better. You're almost certain to find them very open to it. They just are discovering it along with you. Remember too that as a student, you may see a good thing happen over here in this class, and your faculty member is just teaching one class. So you're sampling a whole bunch of them, and you can bring to them good ideas, and you should definitely do that.
And I would also add that if that doesn't work, that is absolutely the first step that you should take. But if you want to go the next step further, I know, for instance, I hold office hours in the College of Engineering, and I am happy to accept these kinds of bits of feedback and intercede on behalf of students. Or you can go to your advisor or your department chair as well. And I just want to stress again, what Professor McKay said is absolutely true. I mean, we're all learning, and many faculty may not have the experience or have seen as many different options or ways of employing these things. So open up those lines of communication. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to President Schlissel to end us off here.
Very good. Thanks, Preeti. And thanks to all of our panelists today, especially our special visitors for this discussion around education. Good luck to our students. I know you're in the middle of finals or final exercises of various types. It'll be over quite soon. We'll have a longer than usual winter break, so please enjoy that time. Use it to recharge. Please, everybody, take all the safety guidance to heart. The end is in sight. It would be a shame to have a tragic event in your family while we're queued up to receive a vaccine that'll prevent such things from happening. So please be careful, travel safely, and we will see everyone back in the new year, either virtually or in person. Thanks for working so hard and being so resilient through a very challenging semester. I personally am ready to see 2020 be over with, and I'm very hopeful that 2021 will be a better year, not just for the University of Minden, but for our global society. So thanks all very much. Stay safe and be healthy. Bye-bye.